My friends, today I want to talk about a prayer that is more than just words. It is a declaration, an armor, and a divine contract. This prayer is found in Psalm 91, one of the most powerful pieces of scripture you could ever engage with. It is a prayer of protection, a prayer of deliverance, and most importantly, it is a prayer that secures the believer under the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91 stands as one of the most profound declarations of God's protection and security over the life of a believer. It is a powerful promise that for those who choose to trust in Him, God provides a refuge like no other, a fortress that offers unparalleled safety. This idea of God as a refuge and fortress is not merely symbolic, it is a reality for those who understand the spiritual covering that the Almighty provides. The psalm opens with a simple but significant condition: he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. To dwell means to live, to reside, to stay consistently in one place. Here, the secret place represents intimacy with God, a place of closeness, a place of communion, a place where the heart and soul find rest in Him. It is only those who dwell in this place, who remain connected to the heart of God, that will experience the fullness of His protection. Many may know about God, but few make Him their dwelling place. Few have decided to live under His covering daily, to remain close to Him in both good and bad times. The imagery of abiding under God's shadow is significant. In ancient cultures, a shadow was often associated with protection from the scorching heat. To be in someone's shadow meant to be under their care, shielded from harm. In the context of Psalm 91, to dwell in God's shadow means to be under His constant watch, protected from the dangers of life. This shadow represents the safety of God's presence, where no harm can reach because He stands as the ultimate protector. When we choose to dwell in this secret place, we have access to God as our refuge and fortress. A refuge is a place of safety, a shelter from danger. It is where one retreats to escape the storms of life. In a world filled with uncertainty, trials, and temptations, God offers Himself as a safe haven where we can run to and find peace. There is a deep sense of security in knowing that God is not just a temporary shelter, but an eternal refuge. He is a place where we can find rest for our souls, a place where we are hidden from the attacks of the enemy. The psalm also speaks of God as a fortress. A fortress is a strong, fortified place, impenetrable and secure. In ancient times, a fortress was a symbol of strength and protection, designed to withstand the attacks of enemies. When Psalm 91 refers to God as our fortress, it is declaring that He is our defense, our shield against every threat. Nothing can breach the walls of God's protection. No enemy is strong enough, no force is great enough, and no weapon is powerful enough to break through the security that God offers. But there's something deeper here than just the idea of physical protection. The refuge and fortress that God provides are not limited to protecting us from external dangers. They also shield our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. The real battleground often lies within fear, anxiety, doubt, and discouragement. These internal enemies can be just as devastating, if not more so, than any external threat. Yet when we make God our refuge and fortress, He protects us from the storms that rage within. He calms our fears, strengthens our hearts, and fills us with peace that surpasses all understanding. Moreover, the security of God's refuge is not based on our ability to protect ourselves, but on His power and faithfulness. The psalmist writes, "I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust." Notice the confidence in these words, "in Him I will trust." Trust is the key to experiencing the fullness of God's protection. When we place our trust in Him, we are essentially saying, God, I cannot protect myself, but I believe that You can and will protect me. It is an act of surrender, of recognizing that His power is far greater than our own. Trusting in God as our refuge and fortress requires faith, especially in times of uncertainty. It is easy to trust God when everything is going well, but it is in the midst of trials and challenges that our faith is truly tested. When the storms of life come, when we face dangers and difficulties, that is when we must choose to dwell in the secret place and trust in the strength of God's protection. The world may offer temporary solutions, but only God can offer a refuge that is eternal and unshakable. The psalmist also reminds us that God's protection is comprehensive. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. The snare of the fowler represents hidden traps, those dangers that we cannot see or anticipate. Life is full of unexpected challenges and hidden dangers, but God promises to deliver us from them. He sees what we cannot see, and he protects us from the schemes of the enemy. The perilous pestilence refers to widespread calamities, whether they be sickness, disasters, or other large-scale threats. Yet, even in the face of these dangers, God remains a fortress for those who trust in him. Psalm 91 emphasizes that God's protection extends to every aspect of our lives. Whether we are facing visible enemies or invisible threats, whether we are battling external forces or internal struggles, God is our refuge and fortress. His protection is not partial, it is complete. It covers us in every situation, in every circumstance, and at all times. It is a protection that is available to those who choose to trust in him fully without reservation. The second key point in Psalm 91 centers on the conditions of God's protection, highlighting the relationship between the believer and God. This divine protection is not automatic. It requires a particular posture of the heart and a deep commitment to God. The psalm introduces us to the idea that the promises of safety, security, and deliverance are reserved for those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High, and not merely for those who occasionally seek God when they face trouble. The concept of dwelling is crucial, as it speaks to a lifestyle of consistent communion with God. To dwell in the secret place is to live in close, intimate fellowship with God. It's about more than just knowing about God or seeking him occasionally. It means making God the central focus of our lives, our constant source of strength, and our refuge in every situation. The secret place of the Most High refers to the inner sanctum of a relationship with God, a place of intimacy, a place where we draw near to him in prayer, in worship, and in obedience. This is where divine protection is activated. Many people may believe in God, but the depth of their relationship determines the extent of the protection they experience. The invitation to dwell in the secret place is not just about being a believer, it's about becoming a person who lives in the presence of God continuously. It's about cultivating a heart that seeks after him, not just in moments of crisis, but as a daily practice. To dwell means to live, and living in the secret place means prioritizing God in every aspect of life, making him our first and constant resort. What does this dwelling look like? It involves spending time in God's word, meditating on his promises, and allowing his spirit to guide and direct our steps. It means placing ourselves under his authority and trusting him in every situation. It means living a life that is rooted in prayer, where communication with God becomes as natural as breathing. In this place, we come to know the character of God, his faithfulness, his love, and his power to protect and deliver. Psalm 91 shows us that those who dwell in the secret place are the ones who will experience God as a fortress. The text uses strong imagery of safety and security, like being under the shadow of the Almighty, which implies that his presence surrounds us. This shadow is not just a metaphor, it represents the nearness of God. Those who dwell close to him are shielded from the storms of life. They find peace under his wings, like a bird shelters its young from the elements. However, this kind of protection requires something from us trust. The psalmist writes, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Trust is the foundation of a relationship with God. Trust says, even when I don't understand, even when I can't see the full picture, I will rely on God's character and his promises. Trust is what keeps us dwelling in the secret place. Without trust, we are tempted to step outside of God's protection and try to manage life on our own terms. But when we trust in God, we surrender our control and lean on his wisdom and strength. The conditional nature of God's protection in Psalm 91 also reveals a deeper truth about the relationship between faith and obedience. Trusting God means walking in obedience to his word. It's about living in alignment with his will, which positions us to receive his promises. Obedience is an expression of trust. It shows that we believe God's ways are higher than our own and that his commands are given for our good. When we choose to walk in obedience, we are essentially choosing to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, because obedience keeps us in close fellowship with him. Furthermore, Psalm 91 is clear that those who dwell in God's presence are shielded from a wide range of dangers. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. The psalm lists different kinds of threats, those that come in the dark of night and those that appear in broad daylight. Whether they are seen or unseen, God promises protection. Yet this protection is linked to our dwelling in His presence, our choosing to stay close to Him, and our trust in His ability to shield us from harm. In the modern world, it is easy to be consumed by fear of the future, fear of sickness, fear of financial instability, or fear of danger. But for those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High, there is no need for fear. Why? Because they have placed their lives in the hands of God, and in doing so, they are covered by His divine protection. The presence of God becomes a fortress around them, insulating them from the attacks of the enemy, from fear and from the uncertainties that life presents. The promise of protection in Psalm 91 is not just for physical safety, it is also for emotional and spiritual security. God protects us from the internal struggles that can often be more dangerous than external threats. Fear, anxiety, and doubt are some of the greatest battles we face, but in the secret place, God calms our fears and strengthens our hearts. His protection extends to every part of our being, body, mind, and spirit, offering peace that surpasses all understanding. This peace comes from knowing that God is in control. It comes from understanding that when we dwell in His presence, nothing can happen to us outside of His will. It doesn't mean that challenges won't come. It means that when they do, we are protected by the one who holds the universe in His hands. The third key point in Psalm 91 is the promise of angelic assistance, which underscores the supernatural help available to believers who dwell in God's presence. The psalm explicitly states, "For He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways." This profound promise reveals that God does not leave us to navigate life's challenges on our own. Instead, He assigns His angels to guard and protect those who trust in Him, highlighting the unseen forces at work in our lives. Angels, as messengers and servants of God, are often depicted throughout Scripture as instruments of divine intervention. They are not merely mythological figures or fanciful ideas. They are real, powerful beings created by God for specific purposes. Their role is to serve and assist God's people, acting as guardians against harm and danger. The promise of angelic protection offers reassurance to believers that they are not alone in their struggles. When we dwell in the secret place, we enter into a realm where spiritual battles are fought on our behalf by these heavenly beings. The phrase, "give His angels charge over you," indicates a delegated authority. God commands His angels to watch over us, to guard us, and to ensure our safety. This divine assignment is a testament to the depth of God's care and concern for His children. Imagine the Creator of the universe personally overseeing our lives through His angels. This should inspire confidence and peace in the hearts of those who trust in Him. In a world filled with uncertainty, the knowledge that we have divine protectors watching over us provides immense comfort. It's important to recognize that this protection does not imply a life free from challenges or difficulties. Rather, it assures us that we have heavenly assistance as we face life's adversities. The promise of angelic protection reinforces the understanding that God is deeply involved in our lives, orchestrating events and circumstances to fulfill His purposes. Angels can intervene in miraculous ways, often when we least expect it. There are countless testimonies of believers who have experienced the unseen hand of God through angelic assistance during critical moments of their lives, whether through protection from physical danger, guidance in difficult decisions, or even comfort in times of sorrow. The concept of angels guarding us also highlights the reality of spiritual warfare. We must remember that as believers, we are in a spiritual battle against forces that seek to harm us, both physically and spiritually. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. In this context, the promise of angelic guardianship is vital. It assures us that while we may face spiritual attacks, we are not defenseless. God has equipped us with divine help through His angels who actively participate in our protection and victory. Furthermore, This promise encourages us to be mindful of our words and declarations. When we affirm our trust in God and declare His promises, we align ourselves with His will and invite His angels to work on our behalf. Our faith acts as a catalyst, activating the protection that God has ordained. In times of fear or anxiety, speaking the truth of God's word can help to reinforce our trust and open the door for His angelic assistance to manifest in our lives. The psalm continues with a powerful assurance: in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. This imagery depicts the care and diligence with which angels guard us. They are there to catch us before we stumble, to guide us through the pitfalls of life, and to prevent harm from coming our way. It's a beautiful illustration of how God desires to protect us, not just from significant threats, but also from the small missteps that could lead to injury or harm. His angels are like watchful guardians, ready to intervene at the right moment. In the practical sense, acknowledging the presence of angels in our lives can lead to a greater awareness of God's continual care and guidance. It helps us to recognize that we are not alone in our journey. This realization can shift our perspective, fostering a sense of peace and confidence even amidst challenges. When we dwell in God's presence, we can move forward with courage, knowing that we have a host of angels supporting us. Moreover, the promise of angelic assistance serves as a reminder of God's sovereignty and faithfulness. He is a God who actively engages with His creation, ensuring that His plans and purposes are fulfilled in our lives. By sending His angels, God demonstrates His unwavering commitment to our well-being. This promise is a call to trust in His power and provision, to lean on His understanding, and to have faith in the supernatural workings of His kingdom. As we embrace this truth, we can approach life's uncertainties with confidence, knowing that we are enveloped in divine protection. In moments of fear or doubt, we can remember that God has equipped us with a heavenly host ready to assist us, guarding us against unseen dangers and guiding our paths. The promise of angelic assistance is not just a comforting thought, it is a powerful reality for those who choose to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, a reminder that we are never without help, never without hope, and never without the protection of our God. The fourth key point in Psalm 91 is the assurance of deliverance from danger, which is a central theme woven throughout this powerful passage. The psalm opens with a declaration of God's protective nature and culminates in the promise that He will deliver us from various forms of peril. This assurance of deliverance serves as a source of comfort and strength for those who trust in Him, reminding us that God is not only our refuge and fortress, but also our rescuer in times of trouble. The psalmist begins by articulating the realities of life that can bring fear and anxiety. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day. Here, the imagery of night and day encapsulates the breadth of our experiences, the known and the unknown, the visible and the hidden. Night often represents fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. In contrast, day symbolizes clarity and awareness. The psalm reassures us that regardless of the time or circumstances, God's deliverance is always available to those who dwell in His presence. God's promise of deliverance is not limited to physical dangers, but extends to emotional and spiritual threats as well. The verse mentions the pestilence that walks in darkness and the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Pestilence refers to deadly diseases or afflictions that can strike unexpectedly, often lurking in the shadows. The destruction that occurs at noon represents the chaos and calamity that can manifest in our lives during the most visible and public times. Yet, regardless of the source or nature of the danger, God promises that He will deliver us. This promise of deliverance highlights the proactive nature of God's protection. It emphasizes that God is not passive. He actively engages in our lives to rescue us from harm. When we find ourselves in challenging situations, it is vital to remember that our God is a deliverer. He is not just present to comfort us in our pain, He is committed to rescuing us from it. This truth can instill hope and confidence in the hearts of believers, especially during times of trial and tribulation. The assurance of deliverance is also connected to our faith and trust in God. The psalmist declares, He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. Here we see the importance of communication with God. When we call upon him in prayer, we activate his promise of deliverance. God's willingness to answer our cries reflects his intimate relationship with us. It is an invitation to approach him boldly, knowing that he is ready to respond. Deliverance also comes with the promise of God's presence. I will be with him in trouble. This declaration is powerful as it assures us that we are never alone in our struggles. The presence of God brings comfort and strength, allowing us to endure and overcome the challenges we face. When we are enveloped in his presence, we gain a deeper understanding that he is not only with us, but is actively working on our behalf. His presence provides peace amidst chaos, clarity amidst confusion, and strength amidst weakness. Moreover, the promise of deliverance includes an assurance of honor. God does not merely rescue us from danger, he elevates us. I will deliver him and honor him. This statement reveals God's heart to not only save us, but to also reward our trust in him. When we place our faith in God, he acknowledges our reliance on him and grants us honor in the midst of our challenges. This honor can manifest in various ways: spiritual growth, testimony, and even restoration in areas where we have suffered loss. It is also essential to recognize that deliverance may not always look like we expect. We may envision a specific outcome or timeline for our rescue, but God's ways are higher than ours. His deliverance can come in various forms: healing, provision, peace, or even strength to endure. In many cases, deliverance may involve walking through the valley of the shadow of death rather than being whisked away from it. However, the promise remains that God will always be with us, guiding us and leading us to victory. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of God's deliverance. From the Israelites being delivered from slavery in Egypt to David being rescued from the hand of Goliath, God's faithfulness in delivering his people is evident. Each story serves as a reminder of his unwavering commitment to protect and rescue those who trust in him. In our own lives, we can look back and recognize the many times God has delivered us from various situations, whether it be physical, emotional, or spiritual struggles. These personal testimonies strengthen our faith and serve as a reminder of the unchanging nature of God. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and his promise of deliverance remains steadfast. As we embrace this truth, we are called to respond with gratitude and trust. When we face danger, rather than succumbing to fear, we can recall the many times God has delivered us in the past. We can proclaim his faithfulness over our circumstances and confidently trust in his ability to rescue us once more. This posture of faith not only honors God, but also opens the door for his divine intervention. The promise of deliverance in Psalm 91 encourages us to cultivate a deep, abiding relationship with God. When we dwell in the secret place, we tap into the wellspring of his protection, guidance, and deliverance. We are assured that we can call upon him in our times of trouble, and he will respond with his presence and power. As we embrace this assurance, we can face life's uncertainties with confidence, knowing that we are under the watchful care of our deliverer. God's promises are our anchor, grounding us in the storms of life and reminding us that we are never alone in our struggles. With God as our refuge, fortress, and deliverer, we can live boldly, knowing that his protection and guidance accompany us every step of the way. The fifth key point in Psalm 91 is the promise of long life and fulfillment, which serves as a culmination of the blessings bestowed upon those who dwell in God's presence. The psalmist concludes with a powerful assurance: with long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This promise encapsulates not only the gift of physical longevity, but also the richness and fullness of life that comes from a deep relationship with God. In today's fast-paced world, the concept of long life is often equated with mere existence or longevity. However, the biblical understanding of long life goes beyond simply counting years. It emphasizes quality over quantity. When God promises to satisfy us with long life, he is offering a life filled with purpose, joy, and peace. This fulfillment is rooted in relationship with him, where we experience the abundant life that Jesus spoke about in John 10. 10 have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. The promise of long life is closely linked to the conditions set forth earlier in the psalm. to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, to trust in God's protection, and to call upon Him in times of trouble are all aspects that lead to this fulfillment. God desires that His children live lives that are vibrant and meaningful, and this is made possible through a relationship with Him. When we choose to dwell in His presence, we align ourselves with His purposes, allowing Him to lead and guide us toward a life that reflects His glory. Furthermore, the promise of satisfaction indicates that God not only gives us life, but also ensures that our lives are fulfilling and complete. In a world where many pursue fulfillment through material possessions or achievements, God invites us to find our satisfaction in Him. This satisfaction comes from knowing our identity in Christ, understanding our purpose, and experiencing His love and grace. When we anchor our lives in Him, we discover a peace and contentment that surpasses worldly understanding. Additionally, the concept of long life in Psalm 91 includes the promise of divine protection and preservation. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High can face life's challenges with the assurance that God is with them, guiding and protecting them. This protection extends to all areas of life, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. When we trust in God's faithfulness, we can navigate the uncertainties of life with confidence, knowing that He has our best interests at heart. The promise of long life also encompasses the idea of legacy. As we dwell in God's presence and experience His faithfulness, we become vessels through which His love and grace can flow to others. Our lives can serve as a testimony to God's goodness, inspiring and encouraging those around us. The impact of a life lived in accordance with God's will can extend far beyond our years, influencing generations to come. This legacy of faith can be one of the greatest blessings of a life surrendered to God. Moreover, the promise of fulfillment points to the ultimate gift of salvation. When God declares, "I will show him my salvation," He is speaking of the eternal life that is offered through Jesus Christ. Salvation encompasses not only deliverance from sin and death, but also the promise of a life that is abundant and full. Through Christ, we are reconciled to God, allowing us to experience true fulfillment in our relationship with Him. This salvation is a transformative experience that brings hope, joy, and purpose to our lives. In times of uncertainty or distress, we can cling to the promise of long life and fulfillment. When we face challenges, we are reminded that God's plans for us are good. Jeremiah 29:11 reassures us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This promise encourages us to trust in God's faithfulness, even when our circumstances seem overwhelming. Living in the assurance of God's promises allows us to navigate life with a sense of peace and purpose. We can approach each day with the understanding that our lives have significance and that we are part of a larger narrative of God's redemptive work. This perspective transforms how we view challenges, helping us to see them as opportunities for growth and deeper reliance on God. As we dwell in the secret place of the Most High, we can experience the fullness of life that God desires for us. This life is characterized by a deep sense of purpose, joy, and fulfillment that transcends our circumstances. God's promise of long life is not just about adding years to our lives, it is about adding life to our years. It is an invitation to live fully in the present, embracing each moment with gratitude and trust in God's goodness. Ultimately, the promise of long life and fulfillment in Psalm 91 reminds us that we serve a God who is deeply invested in our lives. He desires for us to flourish, to experience His love and grace, and to live out our purpose with joy. As we anchor our lives in Him, we find the strength to navigate life's challenges and the assurance that He will satisfy us with His goodness. In every season, we can proclaim with confidence that our God is faithful and His promises are true. Through His protection, guidance, and the gift of salvation, we are assured of a life that is rich, fulfilling, and eternal. The sixth key point in Psalm 91 is the declaration of God's faithfulness, which serves as a profound affirmation of His character and promises. The psalmist concludes with a powerful statement, "Because He has set His love upon me, therefore I will deliver him, I will set him on high, because he has known my name." This declaration not only reflects the relationship between God and the believer, but also emphasizes the importance of love, knowledge, and trust in experiencing God's faithfulness. At the heart of this promise is the condition of setting one's love upon God. This intentional act of love signifies a deep, abiding relationship with the Creator. It involves more than mere acknowledgement of God's existence. It requires an active choice to prioritize our relationship with Him above all else. When we set our love upon God, we enter into a covenant relationship that draws us closer to Him, opening the door for His blessings to flow into our lives. Love, as described in this verse, is a transformative force. It compels us to seek God earnestly, to engage in prayer and worship, and to pursue a life that reflects His character. When we love God, our desires align with His will, and we begin to see His faithfulness manifest in our lives. This love is not based on our circumstances or feelings. It is a steadfast commitment to trust in God's goodness, even when life is challenging. The psalmist further emphasizes that those who know God's name are positioned to experience His faithfulness. Knowing God's name goes beyond intellectual understanding. It involves a relational knowledge that comes from personal experience and intimacy with Him. Throughout Scripture, God reveals Himself through His names, each reflecting different aspects of His character: Jehovah Jireh, our provider, Jehovah Rapha, our healer, and El Shaddai, God Almighty, to name a few. Each name embodies a specific promise of His faithfulness and power. When we truly know God's name, we gain confidence in His ability to deliver us in times of trouble. We recognize that He is not a distant deity, but an ever-present help who desires to be intimately involved in our lives. This relational knowledge allows us to approach Him with boldness, knowing that He is faithful to His promises. It is this understanding that enables us to declare with conviction, "I will trust in the Lord, He is my refuge and fortress." Moreover, God's declaration that He will deliver those who set their love upon Him speaks to the depth of His commitment to His people. The promise of deliverance is not conditional on our performance or perfection. Rather, it is rooted in God's unwavering faithfulness. When we choose to love and trust Him, we can rest assured that He will respond to our needs and rescue us from danger. The phrase "one will set Him on high" further illustrates the elevation that comes from a close relationship with God. When we dwell in His presence and prioritize our love for Him, He lifts us above the challenges of life. This elevation is not merely a physical or material blessing. It signifies a spiritual position of safety, security, and victory. God places us in a position where we can view our circumstances from His perspective, enabling us to face challenges with courage and confidence. This promise also serves as a reminder of the hope we have in Christ. In a world filled with uncertainties and trials, we can cling to the truth that God is faithful to deliver us. His faithfulness is not dependent on our understanding or timing. It is rooted in His character. We can take comfort in knowing that He is a God who keeps His promises, and He will never abandon those who put their trust in Him. The call to set our love upon God invites us into a deeper walk of faith. It encourages us to seek Him with our whole hearts, to engage in worship, and to cultivate a relationship that transcends the superficial. This intentional pursuit of God positions us to experience His faithfulness in tangible ways, allowing us to witness His hand at work in our lives. Additionally, the declaration of God's faithfulness in Psalm 91 reminds us of the importance of gratitude and acknowledgement. When we recognize and celebrate God's faithfulness in our lives, we strengthen our relationship with Him. We cultivate a heart of thanksgiving, which fosters an attitude of trust and reliance on His promises. In times of difficulty, we can look back on the ways God has been faithful to us in the past. Each instance of His provision, protection, and guidance serves as a testament to His character. These memories become anchors for our faith, helping us to navigate present challenges with confidence. We can declare, if God has been faithful in the past, He will be faithful again. Ultimately, the promise of God's faithfulness in Psalm 91 invites us into a relationship that transforms our lives. When we set our love upon Him and seek to know Him intimately, we position ourselves to experience the fullness of His blessings. God desires to deliver us, to elevate us, and to demonstrate his faithfulness in ways that exceed our expectations. This truth encourages us to approach each day with faith and confidence, knowing that we are loved by a faithful God who is ever present and ready to respond to our needs. As we dwell in his presence, we can proclaim with assurance that we are under his watchful care, secure in the knowledge that he will fulfill every promise he has made. God's faithfulness is our anchor in the storms of life, guiding us, sustaining us, and reminding us that we are never alone. In conclusion, Psalm 91 stands as a profound declaration of God's unwavering faithfulness, a source of comfort, and an invitation to experience the fullness of his love and protection. As we reflect on the powerful promises embedded within this sacred text, we are reminded that God is our refuge, our fortress, and our deliverer. His assurance of divine protection, deliverance from danger, long life, fulfillment, and the affirmation of his faithfulness are not merely words on a page, but profound truths that can transform our lives. When we set our love upon God, we enter into a covenant relationship that empowers us to face life's challenges with confidence and hope. We can rest assured that he hears our cries, responds to our needs, and elevates us above the trials we encounter. In our moments of fear, uncertainty, or despair, we can cling to the promises of Psalm 91, knowing that we are enveloped in his presence and surrounded by his unwavering love. Let us commit ourselves to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, to deepen our relationship with God, and to embrace the fullness of life he offers. As we cultivate a heart of love and trust, may we find the strength to navigate life's storms, the assurance of his faithfulness, and the joy of experiencing his divine protection. As we leave here today, may we carry the truths of Psalm 91 in our hearts, allowing them to guide our steps and shape our lives. May we walk confidently in the knowledge that we are never alone, for our God is with us, ready to deliver, protect, and satisfy us with his goodness and grace. Trust in his promises and let your heart be filled with hope, for he is faithful now and forevermore. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, let us step into a profound truth today, a truth that has the power to unlock the divine path within each of our lives. It is the truth of trusting God, a trust that moves beyond mere words into a transformative force that can change the very foundation of who we are and how we walk through this world. When we talk about trust, trust begins with faith in the unseen. In a world where we often rely on what we can see, touch, and control, this concept might seem difficult to grasp. We are taught from an early age to base our choices on tangible evidence and to rely on what we can logically understand. Yet trusting God asks us to step beyond these boundaries and step into a realm where we can't always know the outcome or predict the future. Trusting God starts with a deep-seated belief in his purpose, a purpose we may not immediately recognize or fully understand. It is this kind of faith, a faith not rooted in visible evidence, but in the certainty of his wisdom and love, that becomes the foundation of a transformative relationship with him. To truly trust in what we cannot see requires a shift in mindset. It asks us to let go of the need for constant reassurance from the world and place our confidence in a source far greater. We may wonder how we can trust in a God we cannot see with our physical eyes, but faith sees differently. Faith has a vision that is not bound by the limitations of the physical world. It sees with the eyes of the Spirit, perceiving what the natural eye cannot. It's a conviction that tells us there is more beyond the present moment, more than the immediate challenges and uncertainties we face. Faith believes in the existence of a divine blueprint, a master plan woven into the very fabric of our lives, orchestrated by God himself. One of the greatest challenges in trusting what we cannot see is that it calls us to release control. Most of us want to know what lies ahead before we take a step. We want clarity, certainty, and assurance that the road is safe and the journey will be smooth. Yet faith often asks us to move without knowing the entire picture, to step forward even when the path is obscured by doubt, insecurity, and fear. Trusting God is not a passive waiting, it's an active decision to believe that he is working, even when we see no evidence of it. It's the confidence that though we cannot see his hands, we can rest in the knowledge that they are guiding us. This journey of faith is often marked by moments of doubt, but these doubts are not failures. They are reminders of our humanity and our dependence on God. When we face times of confusion and uncertainty, faith gives us a place to anchor our souls. The unseen realm where God dwells is not a place of chaos or emptiness, but a place where purpose is always at work, even when we cannot perceive it. God's ways are higher than ours, and his understanding surpasses all that we could ever comprehend. We are limited in our perspective, seeing only fragments of our lives, but God sees the entire masterpiece. Trust, then, is choosing to believe in his perspective, allowing ourselves to rest in his wisdom rather than our own limited insight. Trusting in the unseen also brings us to a place of surrender. To fully trust in God's purpose, we must be willing to let go of our own agendas and preconceived notions of how things should unfold. It means surrendering our dreams, desires, and ambitions to his higher plan. In this surrender, we find peace. It may seem paradoxical, but letting go of control doesn't lead to a loss of security. Rather, it leads to a deeper sense of assurance. When we place our trust in God, we are no longer reliant on our limited understanding or our ability to predict every outcome. Instead, we rest in the assurance that the one who created us knows our path better than we do. Trust in the unseen is not a one-time decision, it's a daily commitment. Each day we encounter new situations, new challenges, and new opportunities to reaffirm our trust. It's in the small, everyday choices that we practice this faith. When we are tempted to worry or take matters into our own hands, we can remind ourselves of God's faithfulness. When circumstances look bleak or uncertain, we can choose to believe that God is at work behind the scenes, orchestrating things for our good. Each moment of trust builds upon the last, creating a strong foundation that can withstand even the fiercest storms of life. The beauty of trusting in the unseen is that it allows us to experience God's power in ways we never could if we only relied on what we see. Faith opens doors to miracles and blessings that are inaccessible to mere human logic. When we choose to believe in what we cannot see, we invite God to move in extraordinary ways. It's as if we are giving him permission to operate in the realm of the supernatural, to work beyond the limitations of our natural understanding. And as we continue to walk in this trust, we begin to see God's fingerprints all over our lives. We recognize that every closed door, every delay, every hardship had a purpose. Each moment was part of a greater plan, woven together with the wisdom and love of God. Faith in the unseen transforms us from within. It shifts our focus from the temporary to the eternal, from the visible to the invisible. We begin to see life from a new perspective, understanding that there is more to our journey than what meets the eye. Trusting in God's purpose gives us the strength to face the unknown with courage and hope. It grounds us, giving us peace that surpasses all understanding. In this place of trust, we are not easily shaken by the trials and tribulations of life. We are anchored, rooted in the knowledge that God is with us, guiding us each step of the way. Each time we choose to trust in what we cannot see, we grow stronger in our faith. Our hearts are molded and shaped, becoming more aligned with God's heart. We begin to see his hand in the small details of our lives, noticing how he orchestrates even the most unlikely events to bring about his purpose. Trusting in the unseen is a journey that brings us closer to God and closer to the fulfillment of our true destiny. Now, to fully experience this transformation, we must let go. There's a divine paradox in the act of letting go. In our minds, control often feels like security. It feels like our way of ensuring stability in a world that's full of uncertainties. We plan, we strategize, and we map out our lives down to the smallest details, hoping to create a future that aligns perfectly with our desires. But in this constant pursuit of control, we can become closed off to the wisdom and guidance of God. Letting go, on the other hand, is not about abandoning our responsibilities or disregarding our aspirations. It's about releasing our rigid hold on outcomes, opening ourselves to God's plan, and allowing him to direct our steps. In this release, we find true freedom and experience a transformation that can only come from surrendering to a higher power. At the heart of letting go lies the recognition of our limitations. No matter how wise, skilled, or knowledgeable we may be, our perspective is inherently narrow. We see only what's directly before us, but God sees the entirety of our lives. When we cling too tightly to our own understanding, we're often operating within the confines of our human logic, which cannot account for the divine orchestration God has planned. Letting go invites us to trust that God's understanding surpasses ours. It's an acknowledgement that while we may understand the details, only He sees the full picture. Releasing control is not about giving up, it's about stepping back so God can move freely in our lives. Letting go also requires humility. It takes a heart willing to admit, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow. This humility shifts us from a mindset of self-reliance to one of God-reliance. And in this dependence on God, we find strength that we could never muster on our own. By letting go of the illusion of control, we are acknowledging that God's power is the true force behind our victories and that His wisdom is the ultimate guide for our lives. Transformation occurs when we allow God to take the lead. When we let go of our need to control every outcome, we create space for God to work. His wisdom is infinitely greater than ours, and His plans for us are higher than anything we could imagine. In the book of Proverbs, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This is the essence of letting go. It's saying, Lord, I may not understand where you're leading me, but I trust that you know the way. This act of surrender allows God to move in ways that defy human logic and understanding. It opens the door for Him to perform miracles, to bring blessings, and to guide us to places we never thought possible. Letting go also allows us to experience peace that transcends understanding. When we're constantly trying to control every detail, we carry the weight of anxiety, fear, and worry. But when we release that control, we hand our burdens over to God, and in return, He gives us peace. This peace isn't based on perfect circumstances or a life free of challenges. Instead, it's a peace rooted in the assurance that God is in control. No matter what storms may come, no matter what uncertainties we face, we can rest knowing that God is guiding us. In this place of surrender, we are not tossed about by the waves of life. We are grounded, secure in the knowledge that our lives are in the hands of the one who knows us better than we know ourselves. Moreover, letting go allows us to align with God's purpose for our lives. Often our own plans are limited by our desires and ambitions, but God's purpose is far greater. When we let go of our own agenda, we make room for God to reveal His higher calling. This is where true transformation begins to take shape as we are molded into the people God created us to be. We may think we know what's best for us, but God knows the desires of our hearts more intimately than we do. He knows the path that will bring us true joy, peace, and fulfillment. By letting go, we open ourselves to His guidance, and in doing so, we step into a life of purpose and destiny. In this process, we discover that letting go is not a single event, but a continuous practice. Each day, we face situations that challenge us to surrender anew. Every moment presents us with the choice to cling to our way or to trust in God's way. It's a journey of releasing our grip, loosening our control, and allowing God to lead. And as we walk this journey, we become more attuned to His voice, more sensitive to His guidance, and more open to His plans. The more we let go, the more we grow. The more we surrender, the more we are transformed into His likeness. Letting go isn't about losing control. It's about gaining a life led by God, a life filled with His power, His purpose, and His peace. In our release, we make space for God to do the extraordinary in our lives. We invite His divine wisdom to replace our limited perspective. We make room for blessings that far exceed our human expectations. And through this process of letting go, we find a life that is not only transformed, but one that aligns with the divine calling placed upon us. One of the most challenging aspects of trusting God is aligning ourselves with His timing. In our culture, we are accustomed to having control over the speed and direction of our lives. We have calendars, deadlines, and goals that give us a sense of purpose and direction. But God's timing is different. It operates beyond the confines of our schedules and deadlines, unfolding according to His divine wisdom and purpose. To trust in God's timing is to acknowledge that He sees a bigger picture, one that we often cannot comprehend from our limited vantage points. Even though it may feel like we are waiting in silence, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating everything for our ultimate good. Waiting on God's timing requires a level of patience and faith that challenges our natural inclinations. We often want things to happen according to our own timelines. We want to see results immediately, especially when we've invested effort and energy into our goals. But in the seasons when things seem delayed, God is often doing his greatest work within us. These waiting periods are not empty or purposeless. They are times of preparation, times when God is cultivating strength, patience, and character within us. Through these periods of waiting, we are molded into the people he has called us to be. Waiting is not a passive activity, but an active trust, a choice to believe that God knows what is best for us, even if it doesn't align with our immediate desires. Divine timing is more than just a delay in our plans. It's God's way of ensuring that everything falls into place according to his perfect purpose. Sometimes what seems like a setback to us is actually a setup for something greater. We might experience closed doors or missed opportunities and feel as though we are moving backward. But what we don't see is that God may be protecting us from something or preparing us for something better. Each delay, each obstacle, and each closed door is a part of his plan. Trusting God's timing means believing that even the delays have purpose, that every season of waiting is a part of his divine strategy. There's a reason why Scripture teaches us to wait on the Lord. When we rush ahead, trying to make things happen on our own, we often create situations that lead to frustration and disappointment. But when we wait on God, we find that his timing is always perfect. It is like the blossoming of a flower. Each petal unfolds at just the right moment, revealing a beauty that can't be rushed. Similarly, God's plans for us unfold in his perfect timing, revealing a path that is more beautiful and fulfilling than anything we could have orchestrated ourselves. Waiting for God's timing also teaches us to depend on him fully. It's easy to trust God when everything is going according to our plans, but it's in the seasons of waiting that our faith is truly tested and strengthened. We learn to release our own timelines and align ourselves with God's timing, even when we don't understand it. This dependence on God deepens our relationship with him as we draw nearer to him in prayer, seeking his guidance and reassurance. Through this closeness, we gain a sense of peace that defies our circumstances. We may not know when our breakthrough will come, but we find comfort in knowing that God's timing is always intentional and purposeful. It's often in hindsight that we recognize the beauty of God's timing. We look back on moments when we felt frustrated or anxious, only to see how perfectly things turned out. What once felt like a delay becomes a story of divine orchestration. We see how the pieces fit together, how the doors that closed led to better opportunities, and how the waiting periods were times of growth and preparation. God's timing is never random. It is intricately woven into the story of our lives, guiding us step by step toward our purpose. Trusting in divine timing also requires that we surrender our attachment to specific outcomes. Often we have a clear picture of what we want and when we want it, but God's vision for our lives goes beyond our limited understanding. His timing is not only about the when, but also about the how. He knows the right way to bring his promises to fruition in our lives. When we let go of our attachment to a certain result or timeline, we open ourselves to the fullness of what God has planned. His timing may not always make sense in the moment, but it is always designed for our good and his glory. Through trusting God's timing, we come to experience a deeper level of peace. We no longer feel pressure to keep up with the world's expectations or conform to the rush of society. Instead, we find a sense of rest, knowing that God is in control and that everything will happen as it should in its proper time. This peace allows us to live fully in the present, to embrace each season of life without constantly looking ahead. We no longer feel the need to hurry or worry because we know that God's timing is unfolding exactly as it should. God's timing is also a reminder of his faithfulness. Each time we wait and see his promises fulfilled, our faith grows. We remember the times he has come through in the past, and this strengthens our trust in his future plans. We learn that his timing is always worth the wait, that no promise of his will ever return void. Each fulfilled promise becomes a testimony, a reminder that God is always faithful to those who trust in him. In the end, trusting in God's timing transforms us. It refines our character, strengthens our faith, and draws us closer to him. It teaches us patience, dependence, and surrender. It shapes us into people who walk not by sight, but by faith, grounded in the knowledge that God's timing is always perfect, even when it defies our understanding. Trusting God's plan often calls us to lay down our own desires, aspirations, and well thought out strategies, which is a challenging act of surrender. We may have ambitions, dreams, and carefully laid plans that we have invested time and effort into developing. Yet when we truly trust God, we must be willing to accept that His vision for our lives may look different from what we imagine. Trusting in His plan is about understanding that while our plans may be good, God's plan is perfect. He knows the purpose and potential of each season, each encounter, each moment we experience, and His plan unfolds in ways that align us with a purpose beyond anything we could envision on our own. God's plan encompasses a broader, more comprehensive understanding of our lives than we can perceive. Our human perspective is often limited, focused on what feels good, achievable, or desirable in the short term. But God's plan considers not only our immediate needs, but also our ultimate purpose, our spiritual growth, and the legacy we are meant to leave behind. When we lean on our own plans, we may find temporary satisfaction, but we often miss out on the depth of fulfillment that comes from living a life that aligns with God's design. Trusting His plan over our own opens us to experiences, relationships, and opportunities that we may not have chosen for ourselves, but are precisely what we need for our journey of growth and purpose. A powerful aspect of trusting God's plan is learning to see life's detours and setbacks as divine redirections rather than obstacles. When our own plans fall through, it's easy to feel frustrated, defeated, or even question our faith. But in God's plan, there are no wasted seasons. Each delay, disappointment, and detour is an intentional part of His design, teaching us patience, resilience, and trust. What may seem like a setback from our perspective is often God's way of leading us onto a path more aligned with His purpose for us. Trusting God's plan over our own frees us from the anxiety of wondering if we are off course. Because we recognize that every step we take is guiding us toward His divine purpose. This trust also invites us to prioritize purpose over comfort. God's plan often calls us out of our comfort zones, asking us to take risks, face challenges, and grow in ways we may not have anticipated. While our own plans often cater to what feels safe or comfortable, God's plan requires courage and faith. He may lead us to situations that stretch us, relationships that challenge us, and opportunities that push us to develop new skills or qualities. These experiences, while uncomfortable at times, are what mold us into the people God created us to be. Each challenge we face within God's plan is a stepping stone toward our growth, preparing us for greater things and building a foundation of character and strength. Trusting God's plan over our own also cultivates a sense of gratitude and contentment. When we align ourselves with His purpose, we stop comparing our journey to others. We understand that each of us is on a unique path, guided by God's wisdom and love. Comparison loses its power because we know that God's plan for us is tailor-made. It's crafted with our strengths, weaknesses, and potential in mind. We find contentment not in having everything we want, but in trusting that God is providing everything we need. This mindset shift transforms our outlook, helping us to celebrate the present moment, appreciate the process, and recognize that God's timing and purpose are unfolding perfectly in our lives. Living in alignment with God's plan brings a deep sense of fulfillment. We no longer feel the constant need to chase success, approval, or material gain. Our worth is no longer rooted in worldly achievements or the approval of others. It's grounded in the assurance that we are walking in God's purpose. This alignment with His plan brings an inner peace and satisfaction that cannot be found elsewhere. It's a life marked by meaning, purpose, and a sense of direction that no worldly ambition can provide. When we trust in God's plan, we are not driven by the fleeting standards of society, but by an eternal purpose that gives lasting joy and fulfillment. Moreover, placing God's plan above our own brings clarity and wisdom in decision-making. When faced with choices or crossroads, we can lean on His guidance, trusting that He will direct our steps. Our lives become less about pushing through doors and more about discerning where God is leading us. We learn to seek His voice in our decisions, to pause, pray, and wait for His direction rather than charging ahead with our own agenda. This sensitivity to His guidance gives us a deep confidence, even when the path ahead isn't entirely clear. We know that as long as we are seeking His plan, He will make our path straight. Trusting in God's plan does not mean our lives will be without challenges or hardships. But it means that every challenge has a purpose, every struggle has a lesson, and every moment of joy is a glimpse of His goodness. In choosing His plan over our own, we place ourselves within a story far greater than anything we could have written alone. It's a life of purpose, guided by divine wisdom and filled with the assurance that we are walking the path designed by the Creator Himself. This trust transforms us, liberates us from the constraints of our limited perspectives, and allows us to experience the abundant, meaningful life God intends for each of us. Obedience to God is a profound act of trust and faith. When we obey, even when we don't fully understand why, we demonstrate a commitment to His wisdom over our own. Obedience is not always easy. It often requires us to move against our desires, our plans, or even the opinions of others. But it's through obedience that we unlock the fullness of God's blessings in our lives. Many times God's instructions may not make sense to us in the moment, yet when we follow them, we position ourselves to receive His best. In obedience, we are saying, God, I trust that your ways are higher, that your thoughts are greater, and that your plans for me are rooted in love. This act of surrender allows God to work freely in our lives, bringing blessings that align with His purpose for us. Obedience calls us to action, to make choices that may seem unconventional or even challenging, but which carry the promise of God's blessings. We see this in Scripture, where God often instructed people to act in ways that defied logic or expectation. From Noah building an ark before the rain came, to Abraham leaving his homeland for an unknown land, obedience was the doorway to incredible blessings. In the same way, when we follow God's guidance, even when it seems difficult, we open the door to His provision, His favor, and His divine protection. Obedience often asks us to step out in faith, to trust that God will provide even when we cannot see the resources or the outcome. It's an act of courage that stretches us, grows us, and brings us into alignment with God's will. God's blessings are not always immediate, nor do they always come in the form we expect. Obedience requires us to lay down our expectations, trusting that God's blessings are always timely and precisely tailored to our needs. Sometimes the blessings that follow obedience are spiritual, like peace, wisdom, and resilience, rather than material. These blessings transform us from within, equipping us with the strength and insight needed for future challenges. Other times, obedience brings forth visible, tangible blessings that confirm God's faithfulness and His ability to provide. But in every case, whether immediate or gradual, obedience sets into motion the blessings that God has prepared for us. It's an act that says, God, I will follow where you lead, and in return, we experience the profound joy of seeing His promises unfold. Obedience also cultivates humility, reminding us that we are dependent on God and His direction. In a world that often celebrates self-reliance and independence, obedience to God is a countercultural act of humility. It teaches us that we are not the ultimate architects of our lives. No matter how skilled, wise, or capable we may be, our lives find true purpose only when we align with God's design. In this humble obedience, we find a closeness with God that enriches our lives beyond measure. We grow in intimacy with Him as we learn to listen for His voice, to discern His guidance, and to follow where He leads. This relationship is itself a blessing as we come to know God, not just as Creator, but as our loving guide and provider. Through obedience, we come to understand that God's commands are not restrictions, but pathways to freedom and fulfillment. When we obey, we are protected from choices that might harm us or lead us off track. God's guidance is always rooted in love, designed to shield us from paths that would lead to unnecessary pain or regret. While the world might perceive obedience as limiting, it is in fact liberating. By choosing God's way, we free ourselves from the burden of decisions that would entangle us, and we step into a life that is marked by peace, purpose, and divine security. Obedience does not confine us, it positions us to walk in the fullness of God's blessings. Finally, obedience transforms our hearts and character. Each act of obedience draws us closer to God, refining us and shaping us to reflect His character. It's in these moments of obedience that we learn patience, trust, and resilience. We discover strength we didn't know we had, and faith that deepens with each step. Obedience stretches us, challenges us, and ultimately transforms us, preparing us for greater things. As we walk in obedience, we are not only blessed, but we also become a blessing to others. Our lives become a testimony to the power of following God's will, inspiring those around us to seek and trust in Him. Obedience unlocks a life marked by divine blessings, blessings of peace, purpose, provision, and spiritual growth. It aligns us with God's perfect plan, allowing Him to pour out His love, favor, and protection upon us. Obedience becomes the foundation upon which we build a life of faith, and as we walk in this truth, we find that God's blessings not only meet but exceed our every expectation. Trusting God through difficult times is one of the deepest ways we demonstrate our faith. Life is filled with trials, some that we expect, and others that catch us off guard. It's in these moments when we face challenges that feel overwhelming or impossible to overcome that our trust in God is put to the ultimate test. While it may be tempting to rely on our own understanding, strategies, or strength to make it through, true transformation happens when we choose to trust God to guide us. By surrendering our fears and anxieties to Him, we allow His power to work in ways that go beyond what we could achieve alone. Trials then become opportunities for God's intervention, for His guidance to shine brightly when our own abilities fall short. Each trial we face is a part of our journey, and trusting God through them helps us to view challenges from a different perspective. When we choose to trust, we shift our focus from the size of the problem to the greatness of God's power and love. This shift changes our attitude, filling us with hope even in times of despair. Trusting God in the face of adversity means acknowledging that no struggle is wasted in His plan. He has the ability to turn what appears to be setbacks into setups for our growth and purpose. What may seem like a roadblock can become a building block when we rely on God, allowing Him to turn each difficulty into a stepping stone toward our destiny. Trials become experiences that build resilience, deepen our character, and refine our faith, shaping us into who God has called us to be. Trust in God during difficult times also allows us to experience His peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. The peace God offers is not dependent on our circumstances or our ability to control them. It's a peace rooted in the knowledge that God is with us, that He cares for us, and that He is working everything for our good. By leaning into this peace, we find the strength to endure, even when the situation around us remains challenging. This peace acts as a shield against fear and doubt, reminding us that our lives are held in the hands of a loving, powerful God. It is a peace that empowers us to move forward, to keep going even when we feel weak, and to trust that God's presence is our greatest comfort and assurance. Trials also provide a platform for God's power to be displayed in our lives, creating stories of faith that inspire others. When people witness how we walk through hardship with unwavering trust, they see evidence of God's faithfulness in action. Our lives become testimonies of hope, courage, and resilience. These testimonies have a ripple effect, encouraging others who may be facing their own struggles. Our willingness to trust God in the face of adversity speaks louder than words, as it shows the world that God is real, present, and active in the lives of those who trust in Him. Our struggles become stories of God's goodness, stories that reveal His ability to bring light out of darkness, joy out of sorrow, and strength out of weakness. Moreover, trusting God during trials teaches us to rely on His strength rather than our own. When we try to handle life's challenges alone, we quickly come to the end of our strength. But when we lean on God, we tap into a source of strength that is limitless. God's strength sustains us, lifting us up when we feel weary and empowering us to press on. Trusting God allows us to acknowledge our human limitations while embracing His supernatural power. This reliance on God's strength humbles us, reminding us that we are not self-sufficient, but dependent on Him. And through this dependence, we grow stronger in our faith, realizing that God is always enough for every challenge we face. Trusting God in our trials also deepens our relationship with Him. It's in these moments of vulnerability, when we bring our fears, doubts, and pain before God, that we experience His closeness in a profound way. The trials invite us into a deeper intimacy with God as we learn to lean on His promises and find comfort in His presence. In times of hardship, we often find ourselves praying more earnestly, seeking His guidance more fervently, and experiencing His love more personally. Through trust, our relationship with God grows, becoming a source of strength, encouragement, and resilience that carries us through every season of life. Ultimately, God uses our trials to shape us into people of unwavering faith. Each challenge we overcome in trust becomes a testimony, a story of God's power at work in our lives. As we look back on moments when we thought we couldn't make it, we see the hand of God guiding us, sustaining us, and carrying us forward. These testimonies remind us of His faithfulness and become anchors for future challenges. When new trials arise, we can draw strength from our past experiences, knowing that if God was faithful, then He will be faithful now. This cycle of trust, trial, and testimony builds a legacy of faith, transforming our lives and revealing God's glory in powerful, undeniable ways. In closing, trusting God is not merely about passive faith. It's an active, powerful alignment with His purpose and His promises. When we place our trust in God, we invite Him into every aspect of our lives. This trust builds a foundation that sustains us through both the trials and triumphs, transforming challenges into moments of growth and leading us into a life filled with divine blessings. Trusting in His unseen hand, obeying His call, and surrendering our own plans for His greater vision, this is how we unlock the fullness of the divine path. God desires to pour out His abundance, His peace, and His purpose upon you. He wants to take you to heights you haven't imagined, to give you strength beyond your own, and to use your life as a beacon of His love and power. Remember, the trials you face are but stepping stones to the testimony that will inspire others and glorify God. With every act of trust, you are positioning yourself within the eternal, unstoppable work of God in your life. So go forth with confidence and courage, trusting in God's faithfulness and standing firmly on His promises. For when you walk in trust, you walk in His power. You will see mountains move, doors open, and blessings flow, all because you chose to trust in the one who holds it all. May you embrace this divine path. Let trust lead you and witness the transformation that only God can bring. Trust Him, follow Him, and watch as your life unfolds in ways beyond anything you could ever ask, think, or imagine. Thank you.
There are moments in life when we feel a deep stirring, an internal shift that we cannot fully explain. We face challenges, trials, and roadblocks that seem to test our very limits. These times aren't accidental, and they aren't just life happening to us. They are intentional, divine moments orchestrated by God. If you've ever found yourself wondering why everything seems to be working against you, why you feel stretched, overwhelmed, or burdened in ways you never thought possible, then you are not alone. This is no ordinary test, it's a sign. God is preparing you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. But here's the truth: He will only reveal your true calling after you've proven yourself in the fire of His tests. When God begins to call you into your purpose, He doesn't make it easy. The journey to fulfilling your calling is often paved with trials that seem almost unbearable. But the very fact that you are being tested is evidence that God is at work. One of the clearest signs that He is preparing you for your calling is the sudden intensification of the challenges you face. Every moment of confusion, every setback, and every painful experience is divinely crafted to mold you, shape you, and prepare you for the weight of your calling. Take a look at the life of Joseph. Here is a man who had dreams of greatness, dreams given to him by God. But before he could step into his calling, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. The journey from the pit to the palace wasn't immediate, and it wasn't easy. But every test that Joseph faced was necessary to prepare him for the responsibility of leadership. Joseph didn't know it at the time, but every trial was pushing him closer to his divine destiny. God tests us in seasons where it feels like the world is against us. These trials reveal more than just our patience or strength. They expose the core of who we are. Are we willing to trust Him when everything falls apart? Will we still pursue the calling when the road becomes dark and uncertain? This testing phase is where God filters out those who are merely curious from those who are truly committed to their calling. You may feel like you're fighting alone, but in truth, God is refining you. During these periods of testing, it's common to question whether you've heard God correctly. You may wonder if you misunderstood His call because the circumstances you're facing seem contradictory to the vision you were given. But this is the very essence of the test. Can you hold on to what God spoke when everything around you says otherwise? Can you remain steadfast when the dream seems further away than ever? In the wilderness, God will strip away everything that isn't aligned with your purpose. The story of Moses is another powerful example. After receiving a divine calling to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, tending sheep. This wasn't wasted time. God was shaping Moses' character, teaching him humility, and preparing him for the immense responsibility of leading a nation. Sometimes the delay you experience in stepping into your calling is actually a divine setup for growth. God will not allow you to enter your purpose prematurely. You may feel delayed, but it's not denial, it's preparation. In moments of testing, it's easy to focus on the discomfort, the pain, and the seeming unfairness of it all. But let me remind you, God does not waste pain. Every struggle is a seed planted in the soil of your future success. Every tear, every heartache, every moment of doubt is being used to build you into the person who can carry the weight of the calling He has placed on your life. This is why the testing is so intense, because the calling is so great. Look at Jesus. Before His ministry began, He was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested by the devil. The wilderness is a place of isolation, of hardship, and of testing. But it is in the wilderness where we are proven. It is in the wilderness where our identity is solidified and our dependence on God becomes unshakable. Jesus had to pass through the wilderness before He could step into His ministry. You too must pass through your own wilderness, where God strips away the comforts of life and challenges you to rely solely on Him. The wilderness isn't a punishment, it's a place of preparation. It's where God tests your faith, your perseverance, and your commitment to the calling He has placed on your life. The wilderness is the proving ground. And while it may feel like you're wandering aimlessly, God is leading you with a purpose. He is teaching you how to trust Him in the dry seasons so that you will be able to carry out your purpose in the seasons of abundance. Another clear sign that God is testing and preparing you for your calling is the feeling of isolation. You may find yourself losing relationships, being misunderstood, or walking a path that others don't seem to understand. This is intentional. God will often remove certain people and distractions from your life during times of preparation. The isolation is not meant to break you, but to help you hear His voice more clearly. It's in the solitude that God speaks to your spirit and gives you the clarity and wisdom you will need for the next phase of your journey. Look at David. Before he became king, he was anointed by God, but instead of immediately stepping into his role, he found himself on the run from Saul, hiding in caves and living in exile. But it was in those lonely places, in the caves of isolation, that David learned to trust God completely. He learned how to lead not just with his sword, but with his heart. The cave was not David's final destination, it was his classroom. You might feel like you're in your own cave right now, cut off from the world, facing battles on every side. But this is the place where God is doing His deepest work in you. He is molding your character, sharpening your vision, and preparing you for the weight of your calling. What you're experiencing is not punishment, it's the process. When you feel the pressure increase, when the trials seem to be coming from every angle, it's because you're closer to your calling than you realize. The enemy knows this, and he will do everything in his power to discourage you, distract you, and make you doubt the very promise that God has spoken over your life. But the pressure is a sign that God is getting ready to elevate you. Just as diamonds are formed under intense pressure, so too is your calling being shaped in the crucible of adversity. God will often test your faithfulness in the small things before He entrusts you with the big things. You may feel overlooked or undervalued in your current season, but understand this: God is watching how you handle the little assignments. Will you be faithful in obscurity? Will you serve with excellence even when no one is watching? This is part of the test. If you can be trusted in the small things, God will elevate you to greater responsibilities. God's tests are never without purpose. He is not trying to break you, but to build you. When the pressure mounts, when the isolation feels unbearable, when the tests seem never ending, Remember this: God is preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. His timing is perfect and His process is intentional. Trust the process. Trust the testing. Because the moment you pass the test, you will step into the fullness of the calling that God has ordained for your life. And as the testing continues, something profound begins to happen. The very trials that once felt unbearable start to shape your perspective. You begin to see that every delay, every challenge, and every hardship was carefully designed to equip you for your calling. God's method of preparation is different from what we might expect. He doesn't just give us the end result. Instead, He takes us through a process that refines and reshapes us so that we're not just ready for our calling, but we are capable of sustaining it when it arrives. In the process of testing, God isn't just concerned with giving you what you desire. He is molding you into someone who can carry out the full responsibility of your destiny. This is where many people fall short. They see the testing as punishment or unfair treatment. But the truth is, the testing is the refining fire that burns away everything that would limit your potential or sabotage your calling. I think about gold. Before gold can truly shine, it must go through a purification process. The heat is turned up and the impurities are burned away. But the heat isn't there to destroy the gold, it's there to make it more valuable. In the same way, God is refining you through the heat of life's trials. The testing is purifying your heart, your motives, and your vision so that when you step into your calling, you will do so with purity and power. One of the greatest signs that God is preparing you for your calling is that the pressure will increase. The tests become more intense, the obstacles seem to grow larger, and the path becomes narrower. But this is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of growth. As God enlarges your capacity to handle more, He allows greater challenges to come your way. You see, God will never place you in a position where your character can't sustain you. If He has called you to a great work, He will ensure that your foundation is strong enough to hold it. Consider the life of the Apostle Paul. After his dramatic encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, Paul didn't immediately step into his ministry. Instead, he was led into a season of preparation, where God tested him and refined him for the monumental task of spreading the gospel to the Gentiles. Paul faced intense persecution, shipwrecks, imprisonment, and more. But every trial was preparing him for the depth and scope of his ministry. The trials didn't diminish Paul's calling, they solidified it. God's testing is always with a purpose. Sometimes He will allow you to face situations where you feel utterly inadequate. You might feel overwhelmed, unqualified, or like you're not enough for the task at hand. But this too is part of the preparation. God wants you to recognize that your calling isn't something you can fulfill in your own strength. The greater the call, the more dependent you must be on Him. It's in these moments of weakness that His strength becomes evident. His grace is sufficient, and His power is made perfect in your weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. As you go through the tests, you will notice that God often brings you to a point where you have no other option but to trust Him. The resources you once relied on, the people you once leaned on, and the comforts you once found solace in will be stripped away. This is intentional. God is bringing you to a place where your faith is fully anchored in Him alone. It is in these moments when you have nothing left but God that you truly understand the depth of your dependency on Him. Remember Elijah, who, after a great victory over the prophets of Baal, was led to a place of isolation by the brook Cherith. The brook eventually dried up, and Elijah was left without the provision he had relied on. But it was in this moment of desperation that God sent a widow to provide for him. The drying up of the brook wasn't a sign that God had abandoned Elijah, it was a test to deepen his faith. God was preparing Elijah for greater things, and in doing so, He had to remove the familiar to strengthen Elijah's reliance on divine provision. The same happens in your life. When God begins to strip away the things that you have depended on, it can feel as if you're being abandoned. But in truth, God is positioning you to rely fully on Him, because what lies ahead requires a faith that is unshakable. The calling on your life is too great for you to walk in your own strength. You must be fully yielded to the one who has called you, trusting that he will provide, guide, and sustain you every step of the way. Another crucial aspect of God's testing is the refining of your motives. As human beings, we often start with a vision or desire that may be noble, but as we journey through life, self-interest can creep in. Perhaps you start with a desire to serve, but over time, the allure of recognition or success begins to subtly shape your motives. God's test will expose these impurities. He will allow situations to arise where your true intentions are revealed, not to shame you, but to purify your heart. He wants you to walk in your calling with pure motives, driven by a heart that seeks His glory above all else. This is what happened to Peter. Before Jesus' crucifixion, Peter declared that he would never deny Christ. His intentions were noble, but when the moment of testing came, Peter denied Him 3 times. This wasn't the end of Peter's calling, but it was a necessary moment of refining. Jesus later restored Peter and gave him the charge to feed his sheep, but now Peter was different. He had been tested, humbled, and purified. His calling remained, but his character had been strengthened through the test. God does the same with us. He will test our hearts, our intentions, and our faithfulness. He will bring us to moments where we must choose between our comfort and our calling. The tests aren't designed to make us fail. They are designed to bring us to a place of deeper alignment with God's will. One of the most profound signs that God is testing and preparing you is that you will begin to see doors closed that you thought would remain open. Opportunities that seem perfect may suddenly vanish, relationships that once supported you may fall apart, and plans you meticulously crafted may unravel before your eyes. These closed doors aren't a sign of rejection, they are divine redirections. God sees what we cannot see. He knows that certain paths, while seemingly beneficial, would lead us away from His ultimate purpose for our lives. The closed doors are a test of your trust. Will you still follow Him when the path you planned no longer exists? When you face a closed door, instead of becoming frustrated or discouraged, recognize it for what it is, a sign that God is actively involved in your life, directing you towards something greater. The closed door is not the end of the journey, it's simply a redirection toward the true path God has for you. Remember, not every opportunity is God's opportunity for you. Sometimes He will close a door because He is protecting you from something you cannot see. Other times He closes a door because the timing isn't right. Either way, the closed door is a test of your faith and your willingness to trust His leading. God's testing and preparation process is not comfortable, but it is necessary. He is shaping you into someone who can handle the weight of the calling He has placed on your life. Just as a building needs a strong foundation before the structure can rise, so too does your calling require a foundation built on faith, trust, and obedience. As you continue walking through this season of testing, you must understand that God's preparation is holistic. It's not just about equipping you with the skills and abilities to carry out your calling, it's about transforming you into the person who can live out that calling in a way that reflects His character. This is where many people miss the deeper work God is doing. They think preparation is solely about developing talents or opportunities, but in reality, it's about the cultivation of character, integrity, and humility. God is less concerned with what you can do and more concerned with who you are becoming. The reason this character development is so crucial is that your calling will often place you in situations of influence and responsibility. Without the right character, the weight of the calling can crush you. Power, influence, and leadership, when given prematurely, can lead to pride, corruption, and spiritual failure. That's why God tests you in the hidden places, because it's in those places where your integrity is forged. When no one is watching, when you're not receiving recognition or praise, that's where God is testing your heart. In the Bible, we see this clearly in the life of David. Before he became king, David was a shepherd, tending sheep in the fields. It was a lonely, thankless job. There were no crowds cheering him on, no royal titles, just him, his flock, and the wilderness. But in that place of obscurity, God was shaping David into a man after His own heart. He was learning how to lead with compassion, how to protect the vulnerable, and how to trust God in the quiet moments of life. These lessons were critical because the same heart that guided him as a shepherd would later guide him as a king. In your life, God may have you in a season of obscurity right now, where it feels like your talents are being underutilized or your work is going unnoticed. But know this obscurity is a training ground. It's in the hidden places that God is preparing you for the visibility and influence that will come with your calling. He is testing your faithfulness when no one is applauding, because if you can serve with integrity in the small things, you will be able to handle the greater things when they come. Another significant part of God's testing process is teaching you how to handle rejection. As you move toward your calling, you will inevitably face opposition. People may misunderstand you, criticize you, or even actively work against you. This too is part of the preparation. God will allow you to experience rejection not to discourage you, but to build resilience and deepen your reliance on Him. When you understand that your validation comes from God and not from people, you become unshakable. Look at the life of Jesus. Throughout His ministry, Jesus faced constant rejection from the religious leaders, from His own townspeople, and even from His disciples at certain moments. Yet, He never allowed rejection to derail Him from His purpose. Why? Because He knew that His identity and mission were rooted in the will of His Father. Similarly, you must come to a place where you are so anchored in God's purpose for your life that rejection doesn't deter you. God is testing you in this area, because if you cannot handle rejection on a small scale, you won't be able to withstand it when your calling places you in more prominent positions of influence. Rejection often feels personal, but in many cases, it's simply a reflection of how deeply committed you are to walking in your divine purpose. People may reject you because they don't understand the vision God has placed in your heart. They may not see the bigger picture that He is leading you toward. But that's okay. God's preparation sometimes requires that you walk alone for a season, not because He wants you to be isolated, but because He is refining your ability to hear His voice above all others. God also tests your ability to wait. Patience is one of the most difficult virtues to cultivate, especially in a world that values instant gratification. But if you look at the biblical figures God used in mighty ways, you'll notice a common theme: waiting. Abraham waited for the promise of Isaac. Joseph waited years in prison before stepping into his destiny. Moses waited in the desert for 40 years before leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Waiting isn't a waste of time, it's part of the process. During the wait, God is testing your trust in His timing. We often think we're ready for our calling long before we actually are. But God sees what we don't. He knows when the circumstances are right, when your heart is fully prepared, and when the impact of your calling will be most effective. The waiting season is not passive, it's active. It's a time when God is preparing the circumstances around you, and more importantly, working on your heart to ensure that when the moment comes, you are fully aligned with His will. In the waiting, God also teaches you how to handle delayed gratification. Many people give up on their calling because they can't endure the wait. They become frustrated or impatient, and they settle for something less than what God had planned for them. But the wait is where God develops the fruit of patience, which will be essential for sustaining your calling in the long run. If you can trust God in the waiting, you will be able to trust Him when the calling comes to fruition. Moreover, God's testing will often involve removing things from your life that are not aligned with your destiny. Sometimes this can feel like a loss. You may lose friendships, opportunities, or even material possessions. But in reality, God is pruning you for greater fruitfulness. Just as a gardener cuts away branches that are unfruitful or that hinder the growth of the plant, God will cut away anything in your life that could sabotage your calling. This pruning process is painful but necessary. Jesus spoke about this principle in John 15:2, where He said, "Every branch in me that does not bear fruit He takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit He prunes. That it may bear more fruit." God's pruning is not rejection, it's preparation. He is removing the things that would hinder your growth so that you can be even more effective in your calling. Trust the pruning process, even when it feels like a loss, because God is setting you up for greater fruitfulness. One of the hardest parts of the testing process is when God challenges you to release something or someone you've been holding on to. Sometimes the very thing we are clinging to is the thing that's keeping us from stepping into our calling. It could be a relationship, a job, a habit, or even a mindset. God will bring you to a point where you have to choose between holding on to what's familiar or stepping into the unknown with Him. This is where faith is tested at its deepest level. Abraham was tested in this way when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, the very promise that God had given him. It was an ultimate test of faith. Was Abraham willing to trust God even when it meant letting go of the thing he loved most? This kind of testing reveals whether your heart is fully surrendered to God's will. Are you willing to release your own plans, dreams, or desires to follow God's leading? When you pass this test, God will not only restore what you gave up, but multiply it in ways you could never have imagined. God is preparing you to walk in a level of faith that transcends circumstances. This is why the testing is so intense, because the level of faith required to fulfill your calling is greater than what you currently possess. He's stretching you, pulling you out of your comfort zone, and asking you to trust Him in ways you never have before. This is not to harm you, but to grow you. Faith is like a muscle. It must be exercised and stretched to become stronger. The more God tests your faith, the more it grows, preparing you for the challenges and victories ahead. As the testing process continues, you'll begin to notice that your priorities start to shift. The things that once seemed so important, the accolades, the approval of others, the pursuit of success, begin to fade in comparison to the deep desire to fulfill God's purpose for your life. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of the preparation process. God is realigning your heart with His priorities. You'll find that what matters most is not the external success or recognition, but the internal alignment with God's will. God is preparing you not just to step into your calling, but to sustain it. He is testing your character, refining your motives, deepening your faith, and teaching you how to trust Him in every area of your life. Each test is a stepping stone toward the greater purpose He has for you. Trust the process, even when it's difficult. Keep your eyes fixed on Him, knowing that the very trials you face today are the preparation for the calling you will walk in tomorrow. In conclusion, the testing you face is not a sign of God's absence, but His preparation for the greatness He has destined for you. Each trial, delay, and closed door is His way of refining your character, strengthening your faith, and aligning your heart with His purpose. As you walk through this process, embrace the pruning, trust His timing, and surrender what you hold dear, knowing that God is preparing you for something far greater than you could ever imagine. May God bless you with the strength to endure, the wisdom to see His hand in every challenge, and the faith to step boldly into your calling when the time comes. Thank you for walking this journey of faith, trusting God's perfect will, and allowing Him to shape you for His glory and your ultimate purpose.
Have you ever wondered why sometimes God separates you from everything familiar, everything comfortable, just before a great breakthrough? Isolation often feels confusing, even painful, but it's critical to understand that it's not a form of punishment. It's God's way of preparing you for what's next. God isolates you because He sees what you're meant to become, and He's drawing you toward it. First, realize that God's isolation is purposeful. Isolation often feels like the most bewildering experience, one that makes you question, why has God placed me here? It can be disorienting, and sometimes it seems to defy reason. But in those moments of separation and solitude, God is at work in ways that only become clear in hindsight. When God isolates you, it's not out of neglect or punishment. It's a deliberate and calculated move designed to shape, refine, and ready you for the purpose He has in store. You see, there's a profound difference between being abandoned and being set apart. In God's kingdom, isolation has a divine intention, a purpose that far outweighs the discomfort it brings in the present. Consider how God has used isolation in the lives of those He called to greatness. Take Joseph, for example, a man who was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and ultimately imprisoned in a foreign land. To an outsider, Joseph's journey seemed like a series of misfortunes, one setback after another, but God was using each moment of isolation to prepare him for a destiny far beyond his imagination. When Joseph was alone in that prison, God was cultivating in him the resilience, wisdom, and humility needed to govern an entire nation. Had Joseph remained in the comfort of his father's house, he would never have developed the qualities necessary to lead Egypt through years of abundance and famine. God's isolation was intentional. It was the groundwork for something far greater than Joseph could have envisioned. Isolation also has a unique way of revealing what is hidden, both in our character and in our lives. When God removes the support systems we once relied upon, we begin to see our weaknesses, our insecurities, and the parts of us that need healing. In the quiet spaces, God reveals what's within us that must be refined before we're ready for his blessings. Often, he removes the distractions and the influences that cloud our vision, enabling us to see things clearly. It is in these moments of solitude that God works on our hearts, stripping away pride, selfishness, and any attachment to things that would only hinder our progress. The isolation becomes a refining fire, burning away what no longer serves us so that we can carry out his purpose with integrity and strength. In God's process, isolation is a protective cocoon. When he isolates you, he often shields you from premature exposure to things that would otherwise derail your growth. Sometimes God knows that if he were to release you into your blessing before you were ready, the weight of it would be too much to bear. Like a butterfly struggling to emerge from a cocoon, your development requires a hidden place away from the pressures of people's expectations and the rush of life. God's isolation is his way of saying, you're not yet ready, but I'm going to make you ready. So he surrounds you in solitude, protecting you from influences that would divert you from his plan. He is a God who loves you enough to say, not yet, because he sees the bigger picture and he knows the magnitude of what he's preparing you for. In isolation, God also creates an environment where our relationship with him can deepen. With people and distractions removed, you're left with an open space to experience God more intimately. This alone time with him cultivates a dependency and closeness that could not develop in any other way. Often in the noise of life, God's voice can be faint, overshadowed by the demands and expectations of others. But in isolation, his voice becomes clear, unmistakable, and profound. God's purpose for isolating you is to draw you closer to him, to teach you that he is all you need, that his presence is enough. As you lean into him, you discover a level of peace, strength, and assurance that only comes from a relationship deeply rooted in trust. Isolation is also God's means of clarifying purpose. The pressures of the outside world can cloud our understanding, making it difficult to discern God's will. When God isolates you, he's removing those distractions so you can hear him with clarity. Isolation cuts through the noise, the opinions, and the voices of those around you, allowing you to perceive God's direction with a sharp focus. When you're left alone with your thoughts and with his word, God reveals a path that might have gone unnoticed otherwise. It's in these moments that God whispers his plans for you, plans that might have seemed improbable, but in the quiet become undeniable. Isolation serves as a crucible faith. When God isolates you, he's testing and refining your trust in him. Without the comfort of others, you're left to rely solely on his promises. It's here, in the moments when no one else is around, that your faith grows in ways it never could in the presence of others. In the stillness, your doubts surface and you're faced with the choice to either hold on to God or fall into despair. Isolation forces you to examine what you truly believe, and it provides the space for God to strengthen your faith, preparing you to handle the blessings that require a steadfast heart. God's isolation is never about punishment, it's about preparation. He's shaping you, preparing you, and instilling in you the resilience and character that will sustain you in the days to come. What may seem like loneliness is actually divine intention at work. Each moment of solitude is a step toward the life he has crafted for you, a life that requires a depth of strength, faith, and vision that only isolation can create. God is not abandoning you, he is equipping you. When God calls you into a season of isolation, he's setting you aside not to punish, but to refine. Isolation often feels uncomfortable and challenging, but it's precisely in those solitary moments that God shapes the depth of your character. We don't always understand why he has to take us through such a path, but isolation is his way of polishing and molding us to embody virtues we might have otherwise overlooked. God knows what's required for the destiny he has in store, and he uses isolation to forge the strength, patience, and humility that will sustain you in the coming seasons. Consider the process of refining precious metals like gold. The gold is placed into a furnace, and under intense heat, impurities rise to the surface, allowing them to be removed. The end result is something pure, something more valuable than before. Isolation acts as a similar furnace, turning up the heat and testing the core of who you are. When you're alone, separated from the comfort of familiar voices and support, your character is revealed in its truest form. You see, God is more interested in developing your character than in simply delivering you to your dreams. He is a God who values the inner life, the integrity, and the resilience within you. So when he isolates you, it's to reveal and then refine the aspects of your character that need to be strengthened. One of the virtues most often cultivated in isolation is patience. In today's world, patience is rare. We're surrounded by instant solutions and fast-paced lifestyles that leave little room for waiting. But patience is a cornerstone of spiritual maturity. God uses isolation to teach you the virtue of waiting, not just waiting for time to pass, but waiting with purpose and trust. When you're isolated and the promise seems far off, you learn to release your own timeline and submit to God's perfect timing. This kind of patience builds a strength that is not easily shaken. You come to realize that rushing ahead without God's blessing leads only to frustration and setback, whereas waiting on his direction opens doors that no one else can open. Patience in isolation transforms you from someone who reacts impulsively to someone who moves with calm assurance, trusting that God is never late and never early, but always right on time. Humility is another virtue that God instills in times of isolation. When you're separated from the crowd, from praise, recognition, and the assurance of others, you are confronted with who you truly are. It's in isolation that you begin to see yourself without the filters of others' opinions or validations. You see both your strengths and your weaknesses, and you come face to face with the realization that apart from God, you can do nothing. This understanding breeds a humility that grounds you. You realize that you are not the center of the universe, and that your achievements, your talents, and your plans are only as valuable as your alignment with God's will. In isolation, God strips away any illusions of self-sufficiency, teaching you to rely fully on him. This humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about recognizing that God is the source of all things, and that without his guidance, your efforts are in vain. Humility gained in isolation is what will keep you steady when success comes, reminding you that all glory belongs to God alone. And then there's resilience, a trait that isolation builds uniquely. Resilience is the capacity to withstand hardship, to persevere through trials without losing hope. In isolation, you often face challenges that test your resolve. You may experience doubt, frustration, and the temptation to give up, but these very moments are where resilience is born. God allows you to encounter difficulty so that you develop a strength that endures. Without resilience, blessings become burdens and challenges feel insurmountable. Isolation teaches you to push past discouragement and to keep moving forward, even when you don't see the finish line. The resilience that God builds in isolation will carry you through life's storms, allowing you to stand firm when others might fall. It's a strength rooted not in sheer willpower, but in the confidence that God is with you every step of the way, turning every trial into triumph. In isolation, these virtues, patience, humility, and resilience become part of who you are. Not because you acquired them in passing, but because you wrestled with them in the hidden places. These aren't qualities that can be learned overnight or in times of ease. They are forged in difficulty, in silence, and in solitude. God uses isolation to grow these virtues in you because he knows that the life he's calling you to will demand a solid foundation. Character isn't built on applause or easy circumstances. It's built in the shadows where only you and God walk together. It's in these moments that your spirit is strengthened, that you gain a depth of character able to withstand both blessing and adversity. This refinement process is essential because the blessing God has in mind is weighty. It's not just about receiving something good, it's about becoming someone capable of sustaining that good thing. Without patience, you might miss the best because you settle for the quickest. Without humility, you might claim credit that belongs to God. And without resilience, you might crumble under pressure when challenges arise. God isolates you to ensure that when the blessing comes, you'll not only enjoy it, but steward it well with the character required to see it flourish. Isolation, then, is not a waste of time. It's not a detour, but a direct path to a deeper relationship with God and a more resilient, humble, and patient character. When you understand that God is using this season to prepare and refine you, you'll begin to view it not as a setback, but as a sacred opportunity. This is the place where God polishes your heart, strengthens your resolve, and molds your spirit. When God brings you into a season of isolation, He's offering you a priceless opportunity to know Him on a level that can only be reached in solitude. Life is filled with voices, expectations, and pressures that constantly pull us in different directions. In these busy spaces, we can lose sight of God's presence, hearing Him faintly through the noise. But in isolation, God's voice becomes the guiding sound, His presence the central focus, and His word the source of your strength. This season of separation isn't about punishment, but about deepening the most essential relationship of your life, the one between you and God. Isolation creates a space where God has your full attention. Often we don't realize just how distracted we are until we find ourselves removed from the routines and relationships that have kept us busy. We may think that we're managing well, that we're connecting with God enough, but when we're alone, we see the truth our relationship with God might have been on the periphery. When He isolates us, He draws us into a sacred intimacy that demands focus and devotion. The distractions fade, and in that quiet place, God begins to speak in ways we couldn't hear before. His voice isn't drowned out by daily concerns or overshadowed by others' opinions. It's clear, personal, and transformative. And in those moments, you begin to discover aspects of God's character that can only be experienced in solitude: His patience, His love, His unending faithfulness. This season of isolation teaches you to lean on God as your ultimate source. When we're surrounded by others, we naturally look to them for support, encouragement, and validation. But when God removes these crutches, we're left to depend solely on Him. In this dependency, we learn what it means to trust Him completely. You find that God becomes the friend who is closer than a brother, the confidant who understands everything. With this clarity of purpose comes a strengthened resolve. You gain not only an understanding of your calling, but also a resilience to pursue it. Isolation prepares you to move forward, knowing that God's direction is unmistakable. When doubts arise or when others question your path, you can stand firm, assured by the clarity you gained in your time alone with God. This sense of purpose fortifies you, allowing you to overcome obstacles and resist the urge to abandon the mission. The clarity born in isolation becomes the anchor that keeps you focused, even when the journey becomes challenging. Moreover, isolation reveals the need for alignment between your life and God's purpose. You start to see areas that need refining, attitudes that need reshaping, and habits that need to change. God uses isolation to prune and prepare you so that when the time comes to step fully into your calling, you are ready to fulfill it with integrity. Isolation becomes a place of alignment where God adjusts your heart and mind to reflect His desires, setting you on a course that is in harmony with His will. This alignment doesn't just give you direction, it prepares you to carry out your purpose with the character and wisdom necessary to steward it well. In essence, isolation brings clarity not only to what God is calling you to do, but also to why He's calling you to it. When you understand the why behind your purpose, you approach it with a sense of reverence and responsibility. You're no longer driven by the need for recognition or approval, but by a deep desire to honor God and serve others. This clarity transforms your purpose from a personal ambition into a sacred mission, something you pursue with humility and dedication. So while isolation may feel uncomfortable, it's in this sacred space that God reveals His plans, unveils your potential, and instills in you the conviction to follow His call. The solitude sharpens your vision, strengthens your resolve, and anchors your purpose. When you emerge from this season, you do so with a clear understanding of who you are, what God has called you to do, and why it matters. And with this clarity, you're ready to step forward, confident in the path God has set before you, equipped to make a lasting impact for His kingdom. Isolation is often where God grows you to a place of spiritual maturity that can sustain you through the blessings and challenges of your calling. When you're set apart, He is preparing you to handle not just blessings, but also the responsibilities and trials that come with them. The deeper He's taken you, the stronger your foundation needs to be. This isolation, then, is an environment where God builds within you the depth of faith and resilience needed for the road ahead. Spiritual maturity doesn't develop in comfort, it grows through challenge. And isolation is often challenging, stripping away the ease and assurance of external support. It's in this alone time with God that you learn the discipline of trusting Him without immediate answers, understanding His will without needing visible signs. You come to rely on faith as a guide in ways that might not have been possible before. By taking you away from the familiar, God invites you to root your trust in Him alone. Without the comforts of routine or the encouragement of others, you're left with nothing but your faith. And in this dependency, it deepens, becoming unshakable. This kind of faith forged in isolation is precisely the kind that can withstand the pressures and demands that come with a life aligned with God's purpose. Isolation also builds a discipline of seeking God that becomes a wellspring of spiritual maturity. When you're in solitude, the easy distractions and dependencies fall away, leaving you with time and space to grow in your relationship with God intentionally. You begin to prioritize daily communion with Him, not because of obligation, but out of desire and necessity. This devotion grows into a pattern that strengthens your walk with God, teaching you to lean into His presence and find joy in His companionship. Isolation trains you to build a life around God's presence and His Word, developing a foundation of discipline that carries you forward even when the season of solitude ends. Resilience is another facet of spiritual maturity that isolation builds. Often in life we want the blessings and breakthroughs, but we may not yet have the inner strength to carry them. Isolation teaches you to endure, to hold firm even when answers don't come quickly, to persevere even when the journey feels uncertain. In these moments of waiting and wondering, God stretches your capacity to stand firm in faith, to push past discouragement, and to hold on to hope. It's a refinement process that shapes you into someone who can handle the weight of responsibility with a spirit that doesn't waver. When God isolates you, it's because He's strengthening you for future seasons where your resilience will be essential. You emerge from isolation with a confidence that doesn't come from external success, but from an inner assurance rooted in God's faithfulness. Spiritual maturity also requires wisdom and understanding of God's ways that comes through both revelation and experience. In isolation, God speaks to you in personal, intimate ways, revealing truths and insights that deepen your understanding of His heart. This wisdom is a product of spending time alone with God, listening to Him and allowing His Word to shape you. You begin to see life differently, discerning His perspective in ways that go beyond surface understanding. This wisdom doesn't just prepare you to fulfill your calling, it prepares you to navigate the complexities of life with grace and clarity. God instills this wisdom in isolation so that when the time comes, you have the discernment to make choices that honor Him and benefit others. As God builds spiritual maturity in you, He's also developing humility, a recognition that this journey isn't about self-exaltation, but about serving Him. Isolation strips away any illusions of self-sufficiency, showing you that your purpose is sustained by God's strength, not by your own. In solitude, you learn that apart from Him, you can do nothing, and this understanding humbles you, aligning your heart with His purposes. Spiritual maturity is not about proving yourself, but about submitting yourself to God's will. Isolation deepens this humility, preparing you to carry blessings with gratitude and responsibility rather than pride or entitlement. Isolation refines your ability to listen to and obey God. In the solitude, you become more attuned to His voice, more sensitive to His leading, and more willing to follow where He directs. This attentiveness is crucial to spiritual maturity as it teaches you to move in alignment with God's timing and wisdom rather than your own. God uses isolation to teach you obedience in the small things so that when greater responsibilities come, you're already prepared to follow Him faithfully. This obedience is a hallmark of spiritual maturity, a readiness to act not based on what's convenient or popular, but on what God has revealed. When you emerge from isolation, you carry a spiritual maturity that has been tested and refined. You are no longer dependent on the validation of others or on circumstances for your sense of purpose and security. Instead, you are rooted in a relationship with God that can withstand both the blessings and the challenges that lie ahead. This maturity built in the hidden place of isolation is what sustains you, guides you, and keeps you aligned with God's will in every season. You are prepared, resilient, and ready, not because of your own strength, but because of the depth of faith, wisdom, and discipline God has established within you. Isolation is often where God does his deepest work within you. This season of separation is not just a period of waiting, but a sacred time when God purges what doesn't serve his purpose and fortifies what does. The path to blessing requires a foundation of strong character, a strength that isn't merely polished on the outside, but solid within. God knows that the blessings he has in store for you carry weight, and only a purified heart and mind can steward them well. Thus, he sets you apart not to discourage you, but to refine you, shaping you into someone capable of carrying his purpose with integrity. God's refining process in isolation addresses the hidden areas of your life. We all have aspects of ourselves, thoughts, habits, or tendencies that, left unchecked, can weaken our spiritual journey. In the solitude of isolation, these areas are exposed, not to condemn, but to correct. Without the distractions of daily life, you're given the time and perspective to confront what's within. God uses this season to bring to light any pride, fear, impatience, or resentment that may linger unnoticed in the hustle of daily living. In these moments, he provides you the opportunity to repent, to let go, and to allow his grace to reshape those areas. This inner purification isn't always easy, but it's essential. God desires to bless you abundantly, and he needs to know that the vessel carrying those blessings is purified and fit for the purpose he has designed. Isolation also brings forth patience and humility, qualities essential for stewarding God's blessings. In the quiet of waiting, you learn to surrender your timelines and expectations, recognizing that God's timing is perfect. This patience builds a humility that understands God's plans are greater than our own. When you're used to taking action, being still can feel uncomfortable, even frustrated. But it's in this waiting that God teaches you to trust his wisdom, his timing, and his way. Patience is not passive, it's an active reliance on God's sovereignty. This reliance humbles you, reminding you that his plans are far above ours and they unfold at the right time. Isolation cultivates a humility that is not just about thinking less of yourself, but about depending more on God. This season also tests and builds your integrity, preparing you to carry blessings without compromising your values. In isolation, there are no spectators, no one to impress, and no need to perform. God teaches you to be genuine, to hold fast to integrity even when no one is watching. Integrity isn't merely about public behavior, it's about a heart that is honest and true before God. When you emerge from isolation, this integrity will be what allows you to handle blessings without being swayed by the opinions or pressures of others. It gives you the strength to make choices that honor God, not just ones that gain approval or ease. In solitude, you become grounded in truth, committed to righteousness, and able to stand firm no matter what comes. Self-control is another characteristic God builds in isolation. You may find yourself tested in areas that require restraint, whether in thoughts, emotions, or actions. Isolation is a time when God strengthens your ability to say no to what isn't beneficial and yes to what aligns with his will. This discipline becomes invaluable when the blessings arrive, as it guards you from distractions and detours that might otherwise compromise your calling. God wants you to enter your blessings with a character that can handle both the abundance and the responsibility with a sense of discernment and focus. Isolation builds this self-control, empowering you to navigate blessings and trials alike without losing sight of his purpose. Forgiveness, too, becomes a lesson in solitude. When you're alone, old wounds, grievances, and unresolved hurts often resurface. God uses this time to heal those places, teaching you to forgive and release anything that might hinder your purpose. Ultimately, isolation teaches you to rely on God's grace rather than your strength. There are moments in this solitude when your weaknesses and flaws become evident and you realize how much you need God's strength. This dependency on grace humbles you, preparing you to carry His blessings with a deep awareness of His mercy and love. You emerge from isolation knowing that the good that lies ahead isn't because of your perfection, but because of God's goodness. You become more compassionate, more patient with yourself and others, and more aligned with God's heart. This character transformation becomes the foundation for the responsibilities and blessings God is preparing to entrust to you. When God isolates you, it's because He sees the fullness of who you are called to become. He knows the potential He's placed within you and the impact He desires for you to make. Through isolation, He molds, shapes, and purifies you, refining your character, so you're not only prepared for blessings, but capable of stewarding them wisely. By the time this season ends, you'll find yourself transformed, carrying a character that is both a reflection of God's love and a testament to His refining power. With a purified heart, humble spirit, and resilient faith, you're prepared to step into your blessings with a character that honors God and impacts the world around you. When God leads you into isolation, it's not to deprive you, but to develop in you a deeper dependence on Him. Isolation removes the familiar supports people, routines, resources that we often look to for comfort and stability. In the quiet and solitude, it becomes evident that these external sources are temporary, whereas God alone remains constant. He becomes your sole refuge, your anchor in the uncertainties of life. This season of solitude is a divine invitation to move from depending on what is temporary to trusting in the one who is eternal. In isolation, there's an opportunity to experience God's provision firsthand. When external resources seem scarce and when solutions aren't immediately visible, you learn to rely on God's wisdom and provision in a profound way. He provides in ways that may surprise you, meeting needs you didn't even realize you had. This dependency shifts your focus, reminding you that He is both your source and sustainer. You start to see that everything, every blessing, every opportunity, every step forward flows from His hand. And through this realization, a confidence grows within you, a faith that isn't shaken by circumstances because it is rooted in God's unfailing provision. Isolation is also a place where God cultivates a deep personal relationship with you. It's in the solitude, free from distractions, that you begin to hear His voice more clearly and recognize His guidance more profoundly. You come to know God intimately, not through someone else's experience, but through your own. In this closeness, you begin to trust Him, not just as a distant provider, but as a personal Father who cares about every detail of your life. This intimacy with God becomes the foundation of your faith, strengthening you for both the blessings and the challenges that lie ahead. You learn that in Him you lack nothing and that His presence alone is more than enough. This dependence on God builds resilience and inner strength. When you rely solely on Him, you develop a confidence that isn't based on your circumstances, but on God's faithfulness. This unwavering trust equips you to face difficulties with peace, knowing that He is in control. Isolation strips away the need to strive or struggle in your own strength, replacing it with the peace of surrender. When you're alone with God, you realize that His strength is made perfect in your weakness. Rather than resisting the solitude, you lean into it, understanding that this season is building a faith that will sustain you when the blessings come. In solitude, you learn that God's presence is a constant source of strength, guidance, and peace. When you're removed from the familiar voices and influences, you find that God's voice is all you need. You begin to depend on His word, on His Spirit, and on His promises to navigate each day. This reliance creates a spiritual fortitude that is prepared to handle both abundance and adversity. You gain an unshakable faith that will remain steadfast, no matter the season. You know that He is with you, guiding you through every step, and that His plans for you are good. This season of dependence fosters gratitude and humility. You come to see that every good thing in your life flows from God's hand, and this awareness fills you with gratitude. You stop taking blessings for granted, recognizing them as expressions of His love and care. This gratitude keeps you grounded, making you aware of His provision and faithfulness at every turn. You develop a humble spirit, understanding that you are not self-sufficient, but sustained by God's grace. Isolation allows you to see God as the true source of all things, stripping away any illusion of self-reliance and filling you with thankfulness. When isolation draws to a close, you emerge with a dependency on God that is not just a necessity but a joy. You find fulfillment in His presence, peace in His promises, and strength in His faithfulness. Your trust in Him is no longer tied to circumstances or outward blessings. It is rooted in a personal relationship that has grown in the quiet places. This dependence transforms you, preparing you to handle blessings with humility and gratitude, knowing that they come from His hand alone. As you step into your purpose, you do so with a faith that is resilient, a heart that is humble, and a soul that finds rest in God alone. When God leads you into a season of isolation, it's often a precursor to significant changes in your life, greater responsibilities, and blessings that require you to be spiritually and emotionally equipped. God knows that with every new level of blessing comes an increase in responsibility, and He desires to prepare you thoroughly for what lies ahead. This preparation period is not merely about waiting, it's a time of training, growth, and empowerment for the journey that awaits you. Isolation provides an opportunity for God to equip you with the necessary skills and insights that will be critical as you step into new responsibilities. It's during these quiet moments that you receive revelation, learn new lessons, and develop a deeper understanding of your purpose. God often uses this time to impart wisdom, teaching you principles that will guide your actions and decisions when you enter into your blessings. This training might not be apparent at first, but the insights you gain in isolation will become invaluable as you navigate the complexities of life and leadership. Moreover, during isolation, God builds your capacity to handle the weight of increased responsibility. Just as a seed must break open to grow into a strong tree, you must be prepared to endure the pressures that come with God's plans for your life. Isolation allows you to grow your spiritual roots deep, establishing a foundation that can withstand storms and challenges. When you emerge from this season, you do so with a strength that is forged in the fires of solitude, ready to take on new roles with confidence and grace. In this period, God may also call you to develop new gifts or refine existing ones. Perhaps you've been given a vision or a calling that requires skills you haven't yet cultivated. God uses isolation to instruct you, leading you to resources, mentors, or experiences that will enhance your abilities. This preparation is crucial because God's blessings are not just given for your benefit, but often for the benefit of others. He desires that you step into your purpose equipped and ready to serve effectively, and this training can only happen in the quiet moments of isolation. God also uses isolation to instill a sense of responsibility within you. It's a time for reflection, for examining your motives, and for aligning your heart with His will. As you wait, you become increasingly aware of the impact of your actions, decisions, and attitudes on others. God teaches you that with His blessings comes a higher calling to serve, lead, and bless those around you. You come to understand that you are not just a recipient of His grace, but also a conduit through which His love and power flow to others. This preparation also involves a strengthening of your character, which is essential for handling the increased responsibilities that come with blessings. God knows that if your character is not solid, the blessings can easily become a burden instead of a joy. Isolation serves as a time for character development, where pride, impatience, and selfishness can be confronted and transformed into humility, patience, and servanthood. As God works in your heart, He prepares you to be a wise and compassionate leader, one who can steward blessings with integrity and purpose. In the quietness of isolation, you learn to prioritize what truly matters. The distractions of life fall away, leaving you with clarity about your values, goals, and purpose. You begin to discern what is essential for your journey and what might be a distraction from your calling. This clarity becomes vital as you step into new responsibilities. You're equipped to make choices that align with God's will, ensuring that your path reflects His purpose and brings Him glory. Ultimately, isolation is about preparation for the blessings that God has in store for you. It's a time when God cultivates a heart of gratitude, helping you appreciate the magnitude of what is to come. As you sit in His presence, He reminds you that the blessings are not just for your benefit, but also for the purpose of advancing His kingdom. You learn to see the bigger picture. understanding that your life is a part of a greater narrative that he is weaving together. When the time comes for you to step into your blessings, you do so with a sense of readiness and anticipation. You're equipped to embrace new responsibilities, armed with the wisdom and character necessary to lead effectively. The isolation that once felt like a season of waiting becomes a launching pad into a future filled with purpose and impact. You realize that this journey was not merely about receiving blessings, but about becoming the person God created you to be, someone capable of handling great things for his glory. You emerge not just with blessings, but with a heart aligned with God's will, ready to fulfill your calling and make a difference in the world around you. As we reflect on the purpose of isolation before blessings, let us remember that each season of solitude is a divine orchestration, a sacred invitation from God to prepare our hearts and minds for what lies ahead. In those quiet moments, we learn that isolation is not a punishment, but a powerful tool for transformation. It is during these times that God refines our character, strengthens our dependence on him, and equips us for greater responsibilities. So as you find yourself in moments of solitude, embrace them. Recognize them as opportunities for growth, reflection, and deepening your relationship with God. Understand that he is not just preparing you for blessings, he is preparing you to be a blessing to others. Each challenge faced in isolation is a stepping stone toward the greater purpose he has for your life. When the time comes for you to step into your season of abundance, do so with confidence. Know that you have been shaped, molded, and prepared to not only receive, but also to steward the blessings that God has entrusted to you. Carry with you the lessons learned in solitude, the strength gained in weakness, and the faith nurtured in dependence. May you emerge from your seasons of isolation as a beacon of hope and light, ready to impact the world around you. Remember, God's blessings are not just for your enjoyment, but for his glory and the good of those he calls you to serve. Stand firm in your identity as his beloved, equipped for greatness and poised to fulfill your divine purpose. Let us walk boldly into the future God has prepared for us, knowing that every moment spent in isolation was a crucial step toward the fulfillment of his magnificent plans. Thank you